Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. If you're here, that means your child and your family are struggling. Maybe to sit and pay attention to virtual classes, or with sensory issues that have become battles. Maybe it's unending fighting between siblings, or fighting with you, or just not cooperating in general. I've lived it too, and I'm here today to help you. I'm Kara Lindell, a mom, a systems engineer, and an exercise specialist. I'm here to share with you the process I created and used to calm my child so that your family can quickly find calm too. Your child's day-to-day behavior is frustrating, but you know they're a good kid. You see glimpses of their potential, but so many of their behaviors are getting in the way. Behaviors may be related to some of these: ADD or ADHD, sensory processing with clothing or fidgeting. They may be unable to transition, especially away from the iPad. Quick-tempered and unable to regroup after a meltdown, or struggling with friends and family. Maybe anxious and unwilling to try, clumsy and uncoordinated, or constantly moving. Certainly, you and your family have many reasons to feel stressed. If you're like my family, you've tried medications, special diets and supplements, meditation, exercises, sensory fidgets, maybe working with a therapist or social worker, or an executive function coach. You have so many tools, but you're still searching. The 7 Steps to Calm program brings you something else. That something is how your child's body organizes itself to move and to be still. It seems magical, but changing the movement changes the behavior. With the 7 Steps to Calm, you'll finally be moving forward on the path you've been waiting for. Yes, I know I'm talking about something really different. Changing movement to change behavior? Yes. By helping thousands of families over the past 15 years, I've consistently seen that changing movement does indeed change behavior. Using the program's organizing movements, the ones I'll be sharing with you, children just like yours became calmer. And then their families became calmer too. Want to hear more? Great. In the rest of our time together, I'll share more of how I came to understand this link between organizing movement and calming behavior, how I experienced this firsthand with my own son, and how you can begin today using the same process. So let's start with more about why organizing movement helps with calm. The key lies with core muscles. When specific movements of the core muscles function in a symmetric, well-organized way, they allow the nervous system to be regulated and calm. You're likely familiar with core strength. Well, there's another aspect to how the core works. We find there are actually tiny micro movements in the core, and how these micro movements are organized is what really matters for calming. Over the years, I've found 4 common reasons why the micro movement of your child's core may in fact be disorganized. First, maybe they had an injury in their early years, often from falling. Second, a medical procedure, a surgery, or a NICU intervention. Third, they may have had an unusual birth, which includes C-sections, breech, or preemies. And fourth, there might have been a prenatal stressor, such as placenta previa, preeclampsia, or being a multiple. This is a new way of looking at your child's behavior, so I made a separate video, 4 Reasons Why, to explain the reasons in more detail. The goal of changing behavior becomes changing the organization of the tiny micro movements. To do this, I'll show you simple yet specific movements. Every parent that comes to our office calls it magic and wonders why they haven't found us sooner. We call that magic the bridging technique. So how did I come up with the bridging technique? Well, a little background. As an exercise specialist, I worked with all ages to improve balance and coordination. When someone wasn't moving as expected, I used my engineering background to problem solve, looking for very specific ways that their movements didn't match, didn't connect, or didn't flow. The children I worked with also happened to have challenges with focus, executive function, or behavior. And the amazing part was when their tiny movements changed, so did their behaviors, learning, and social emotional skills. I began to wonder why. I looked and I looked, and I found answers in the way that the body naturally puts itself together. Neurodevelopmental sequences, otherwise known as human development. But it turns out these essential movements are incredibly small and simple, We call them micro movements, and they work a lot like code blocks for programming. The ability to recode development is the essence of the bridging technique, and that's the story of how I came to understand the link between movement, development, behavior, and then how to change it. Well, while all of this was evolving at my office, I was in need of some serious magic at home. My son's behavior was creating stress in every aspect of our lives: school, home, and friends. I hadn't seriously worked with him because the cause of his behavior wasn't developmental. It was 3 years of chemotherapy for leukemia starting at age 6. His cancer was gone, but so was his self-control, and everywhere I turned for help turned into a dead end. Finally, I began to wonder if some of what I did with the other children might be able to help him, and one day I convinced him to let me check some of his movements. I remember it clearly because he almost fell on the floor. I asked him to do a squat, and he started to fall over. His body was totally out of balance. Well, I used the bridging framework to pinpoint the issue and rebuild how his upper and lower bodies connected, and then he could do a squat without falling over. I didn't think much about it until a few weeks later. He'd gone off to summer camp. Some of you have had this experience. You send your child off to camp and you wonder, how many days? How many days before you get the call? Your son's been a little challenging. Can you give us some insights? Well, a few weeks went by and no phone calls. And in the mail, it was a note from his counselor. He's been a joy to have in the group. Like, did the note go to the wrong family? No. I was so surprised, and I began to put the pieces together. The changes began right after I was able to connect his upper and lower body coordination. He came back from camp looking different and acting different. School that fall was also different. Instead of constantly dealing with behaviors, we were planning his transition out of the therapeutic school. This is the calm that I want for your family and why I've spent the last 10 years simplifying and organizing this process so I can share it with you. So are you ready for me to tell you how you can help your child? Okay, so here's what the program looks like and how you can try it out and the answers to many of your questions. In the 7 Steps program, I'll be sharing one video lesson at a time, showing you a movement to do with your child. What's great about having the video is you can watch it whenever and as many times as you want, and your access won't expire at the end of the program. You can go at your own pace, and I'll be sharing the movements weekly so you're not pressured to keep up. You can also spread them out over a longer time period. I can hear you already wondering, how long will it take for results? How do I get my child to cooperate? What if I do it wrong? Well, seeing is believing, so I'm giving you access to step 1, the first lesson now. Once you see how simple we've made this and how fast your child begins to calm down, you'll want to go on to the rest of the movements. So more details about steps 2 through 7 are included in the first lesson. So what else is in the program? Well, weekly we'll check in with you via email. There'll be a community space for questions, options for virtual coaching, and a survey at the end to fine-tune the program to better help others. So are you ready? Take a deep breath. We got this. See you in lesson 1.